Hello and welcome to another video. Today, I wanted to talk to you all about the Wheel of Time. Yes, the Wheel of Time. Now, before I actually get into anything, I will make the disclaimer, no, I have not read the books, and no, I have not wasted my time watching the television show. And I will tell you exactly why I am talking about the Wheel of Time today when I have little to no knowledge of how it works, although I have read some synopses of Robert Jordan's work. It's because many things which had much potential have been ruined by the idea of tokenization and wokeness, as a lot of people call it. From bounding into comics, Rafe Judkins confirms the Wheel of Time will introduce new LGBTQIA plus relationships, and Season 2 will further explore a polyamorous relationship. Now, I don't mind there being gay characters in stories. In fact, some stories have great characters which just so happen to be gay. The problem is that nowadays we see a current trend in movies and television and even video games that queerness, as they so have rightfully reclaimed, is a token of identity as opposed to just a characteristic of the character, which may play into their overall arcing narrative. Or not at all. Might just so happen to be a innate factor that the character just so happens to abide by. Anywho, the Wheel of Time showrunner Rafe Judkins recently confirmed that the show will include more LGBTQIA plus relationships as well as explore the polyamorous relationship between Ais Sedai Alana Mosvani and her two warders, Maxim and Yvonne. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those correctly. That was introduced in the show's first season. Judkins' confirmation came as part of a video presentation he participated in for JordanCon 2022, where he also revealed that the show will be race swapping Avinda with the casting of Ayula Smart. I think I've talked about race swapping in a previous video, probably from my Vanity Fair video about the Lord of the Rings. So if you've watched that, you know how I feel about it. It's cheap, it adds nothing to the character, and all it is, it's just another form of virtue signaling. But that's not why we're here today. Early in the presentation, Judkins was asked, "Are there any plans to introduce other LGBTQIA relationships in the show?" He responded, we predominantly in the show have been trying to take things that were suggested or hinted at being LGBTQIA plus relationships in the books and sort of expanding on them, bringing those out, letting us know more about those characters and their feelings for each other. So, let's be clear. When Robert Jordan was writing these books, about 6 of those characters didn't exist. And by characters, I mean the BTQIA plus. Didn't exist. So, LG, sure. Again, I don't mind there being LG in works of fiction. However, again, this is all, it's just tokenization, which cheapens all of the characters which are involved in it. He goes on, or taking things that we don't know what the relationship is between those two people and giving them something. Again, more cheapening. Why stick with the overall narrative of the story that was presented to you on the pages of this book, which you apparently loved so much, when you could just add a personal relationship which won't really mean anything in the overarching narrative? The showrunner continued, and I think that's what we'll continue to do with the show the whole way through the series. You'll see us lean into those places that are already so present in the books, and then try to find room to tell more of the emotional history of some of those characters. And a lot of times, that will include their relationships with people, be they of the same gender, a different one, or ungendered, he added. Ungendered. Well, I do know enough about the Wheel of Time to know that really shouldn't be possible in the world of Wheel of Time. Because the one power works on a gender binary. In fact, I've got another article pulled up from a much more progressive leaning outlet than bounding into comics, and that is Polygon. The Wheel of Time improved a fantasy saga's gender binary in just 6 episodes. In this, the author goes on to explain how magic works in the Wheel of Time. In the world of Wheel of Time, there is only one power. The energy which turns the Wheel of Time, spinning out the thread of people's lives to weave the pattern of creation. It is a singular energy. However, in the novels, it is divided into 2 halves, Saidin and Saidar. These 2 halves work both in opposition and in cooperation with each other. And it is their push and pull that creates the motion that drives the one power and turns the wheel. I like that. I think that's a cool way to look at magic. Don't you? Some people have the ability to touch the true source, to channel the one power, and use it to perform miraculous feats. But it's here that the world building hits a snag, according to Polygon. Because the 2 halves are divided into a strict gender binary, with Saidin being the male half and Saidar being the female half. This creates a lot of problems for the series. While Jordan manages to subvert them in places, more often, the narrative falls into the trap of reinforcing tired gender stereotypes. Perhaps the most egregious of these is how the channelers interact with their respective sides of the one power. For men, Saidin is a raw and fiery torrent that fights against being controlled. Channelers have to seize Saidin and bend it forcibly to their will. They're often described as dominating Saidin and wielding it like a weapon. Saidar, the female half of the one power, is described as a steady but incredibly powerful river. In order to channel Saidar, women must open themselves to the power and allow it to fill them, before gently guiding it where they would like it to go. They are described predominantly as yielding and surrendering to it. So I think that the author of this article definitely does have a point. It does reinforce a gender binary. But there is a going narrative right now where people like to scream about toxic masculinity, men being the source of all evils. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. The current narrative is that women should be more dominating and men should practice more surrendering, thanks to toxic masculinity and the number of men in Fortune 500 companies, when it doesn't take into account natural tendencies of both genders. But I can see why they would want to subvert this. So, instead of remaining true to the source material, they have resorted to adding ungendered characters, which fit neither stereotype. Now, how that works within the world, your guess is as good as mine. How would they tap into the one power, or will they tap into the one power? And if they do, how do they rationalize that? Do they rationalize it? And according to the source material, that can't be rationalized. Now, we can see the effects that these polyamorous relationships and LGBTQIA plus relationships have had on the ratings of the show. If I can find what I'm looking for here. So, Wheel of Time is clearly a very popular book series, and at first was a very popular show. But we can see here, the Wheel of Time's first season saw its audience flee the show throughout the season's 8 episodes. According to Nielsen's reporting, the show was the second most viewed streaming program for the week ending November 21st. Nielsen reported the series had over 1.163 billion minutes viewed over 3 episodes. Now, one thing I think is funny here, they're going by minutes now, and I don't know if that's because people will have watch parties, and maybe that's a more accurate representation of how their show is doing. But it almost seems to me that while 1.163 billion minutes is a long time, it almost seems to me like they're using that to mask the actual number of subscribers that Amazon actually has, which are engaging with their content. The show would see a significant drop the next week when release schedule reverted to one show a week. Nielsen reported it dropped to 6th on their charts with only 663 million minutes watched. It would continue to drop with the release of the show's 7th episode only bringing in 467 million minutes watched. However, the show would see a spike with the release of the 8th episode, with people more than likely binging the entire show from the beginning. But even then, Nielsen reports it only had 638 million minutes watched that week. The show would remain on Nielsen's chart for another week, bringing in another 630 million minutes. However, by the week ending January 9th, the show had completely vanished from the charts, falling below 344 million minutes, the amount of time watched for Netflix's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the 20th program on the list. Given the falling ratings throughout the show's first ratings, it's more than likely that the show's ratings for Season 2 will continue to decline, especially as Judkins has indicated they will continue to embrace wokeness and veer from the actual books as much as the first season did. So what can we gather from this? Probably a lot of people watched the first season of Wheel of Time. I watched about the first two, it's either the first 2 or 3 episodes. And as a brief synopsis of what I thought of it, there wasn't a whole lot there for me. I thought that given that the show had a $10 million per episode budget, it would look a lot better than it did. But no, believe it or not, it really didn't. It didn't look it wasn't very convincing to me at all. Costumes weren't great. Special effects weren't great. The overall show was lackluster. Now, obviously, I didn't watch the whole show, so I can't really give a full review on the first season, but I can tell you this. From what this looks like to me, it looks like there's not a whole lot of people going back and rewatching it like people did for the first several seasons of Game of Thrones or The Office. Think about how many billions of minutes The Office has watched. Think about how many billions of minutes Breaking Bad or, even the first season of Stranger Things. I love that. The first season of Stranger Things was great. Fell off after that, but, that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that people are not going back to watch this. They're not recommending it to other people. So the fact that they are sticking to their guns and they're going for more tokenization, more representation for these LGBTQIA plus people, it just shows that they are completely out of touch with their audience, with the book fans, and with normal people in general. My theory is that people in general have a good bullshit meter, and they can tell when something is being shoved to the forefront for the narrative's sake, for what is acceptable in the common parlance, as it were. So, as I said before, the only reason I'm making this video is because I don't necessarily want to see what's happened to the Star Wars fans, the Marvel fans, and all of the other fandoms that are out there that have watched their properties be turned into this mush. I don't want to see that happen to the Wheel of Time fans. Now, I myself am a big Lord of the Rings fan, and that's what I am very particularly worried about with this new Amazon show coming out for the Lord of the Rings. But I'm not going to get into that here because I've already made videos about that, and if you're interested in my opinion on that, you can go back and watch those. So, anyway, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. If you stuck with me this long, I appreciate it. Go pick up something heavy. Peace.